Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'm reviewing Significant Other, now streaming on Paramount Plus. So Significant Other is a new sci-fi thriller movie that has just released on Paramount Plus this past weekend. And it tells the story of a young couple that is out in the Pacific Northwest wilderness. They're out exploring, they're hiking, they're camping. It's something that the boyfriend's really passionate about, and he's kind of using this to build up to propose to his girlfriend. And they discover that there is more happening in the forest than they realize, and you very quickly understand that there is an alien out there that's lurking, and you're trying to figure out what's happening with all that. Micah Monroe plays the girlfriend Ruth, and Jake Lacy plays the boyfriend Harry. And obviously we've seen in the past that Micah Monroe is really, really good at doing these smaller horror movies, these smaller thriller movies. I think she's done some of my favorite movies in the past, whether it be The Guest, It Follows, even some that I've watched recently like The Watcher. So she definitely brings that to this role. I think she does a very solid job. I think she's the standout in this one. I don't think that Jake Lacy is bad by any stretch of the imagination either. I think they both bring a chemistry to this role and a kind of nuanced understanding of each other, because as the movie moves along, you start to realize that Ruth is figuring out more and more that's happening along with this plot. And I will have to say, I'll have to go into some spoilers in this review, because I think the big thing that kind of maybe hurts the movie is the third act of the film. It might gain people or lose people about the way things happen. So I do have to dive into that just a little bit. One thing I will say is the movie is really beautifully shot. You can tell that it's shot in these really beautiful open landscapes. I was reading an article that was talking about how the directors and writers wanted to film a movie during COVID. They kind of put this together during the peak of COVID. They were like, how can we do this? We'll film it outside with just two actors. And I think that's always hard to pull off, but when you do it, it just looks so authentic. And if you can get the most out of just two people on screen, it really helps you connect with those characters. And I think particularly with Ruth, that character is more understandable, and you're really rooting for her, and you're really understanding her struggles because of the way the movie is shot. Being out there in the Pacific Northwest in this huge expanse, you feel the paranoia, you feel the helplessness and kind of the disorientation of being out in the forest, being kind of stalked by a predator, and understanding what they're going through. I think that is where the movie really excels, is its atmosphere. I think the score helps play into that. It builds a lot of tension. The movie does have, in a way, a pretty hard shift towards the halfway point. And I think that's where some people may be lost on this movie or may not really enjoy that change, because it is like a very kind of intense thriller in the beginning that's kind of building up to something. And then it becomes, in a way, almost, I'm not going to say comical, but it's not as heavy hitting when it switches on to what the movie is really kind of supposed to be about. You discover in the second half of the film that the boyfriend Harry has been killed by the alien earlier in the movie, and it has possessed who he is. It's kind of taken over his body and taken over who he is as a person. And she's figured that out. Ruth has figured that out along the way. She's kind of lured him into defeating this alien and kind of overcoming her own personal struggles, because she has a lot of built up anxiety and mental illness and a lot of things that are happening with her that she needs to overcome. And the interesting thing about Jake Lacy's performance is that he kind of has to switch over from being who he actually is as a person to this alien that's kind of morphed with his own feelings and emotions and kind of going through that. And I think that's the part where the movie kind of excels, but maybe some people might not enjoy it, is because the movie starts to really be about how it is to be a human, how it feels to be a human, experience these really complex emotions and this desire to love and understand love and kind of have that compromise of joining who you are with someone else and that kind of impossibility of that. So it gets really deep into that, but it's so strange because he's this alien who's speaking as an alien. He's saying, I don't understand these feelings. These feelings are odd to me. I want to, help you. I want to make you the best that you are. But he's a bad guy at the same time, and he's kind of like charismatic in the way he's talking. So it's really strange. It's strange how they decide to go with kind of the performance and the alien's interaction. But I do think the messaging that it's saying and how the alien is struggling with kind of transforming who it is and understanding what humans go through and understanding how you feel love and what love is as an outsider who can't experience that. So it's a really interesting take. I don't know if it's perfectly executed, but I do like how they tried to like strive for that understanding of what it is to be human. And so I do think that's really interesting, and I think it does add to the film, but it does get a little silly. If you've seen the movie does almost quite literally jump the shark at one point, and I think it just starts to get a little wild. I think if it could have just cut down that last like 40 minutes into like a tight 20 minutes and really drove home that point of understanding humanity and emotions, I think we would have had a really interesting movie that kind of talks about that. But it just got so ridiculous and so silly at some points that it kind of loses the messaging, even though it is there, it just doesn't hit as hard. And the one thing that's kind of interesting is immediately after this movie, I wanted to play Annihilation, which is a fantastic film that kind of talks about human identity and talks about our understanding of who we are and kind of an outside force replicating who we are, and done in like a very sophisticated and nuanced and just visceral way. When this movie feels like it wants to do that, it kind of wants to capture those same themes, and I think it's a little more on the nose with it. But it's so interesting that it wanted to go to that movie, because I think that movie's kind of like maybe a slightly better version of this movie. But overall, I think the performances were solid. I think the cinematography solid. I think the messaging is there. The execution just falls just a little bit flat. And for that, I think I would rate this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I personally really enjoyed it. I do see how maybe someone who goes into it expecting it a more intense, alien creature feature or something more ghastly and dark might be disappointed by it. But if you go into it not knowing what to expect, and you kind of get this interesting take on what it is to be human and the alien interaction and kind of overcoming your own issues and insecurities and anxieties, I think you can enjoy it. So if you checked out Significant Other, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. If you really liked it, if you really didn't like it, always love to hear different opinions. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.